Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 16 to 26 and working with thousands more as a summer camp director over the past 3 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I frequently do workshops with parents, teachers, and summer camp professionals about social skills, connection, and happiness, topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology. If you want tools for raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults, you've come to the right place. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, and welcome to episode 135. This episode is coming out on Friday, April 10th, 2020. Here in California and in the rest of the United States, we're in week 4 of whatever this is called. Podcast listener Vicky from Australia gave me what I think is the best name for what we're doing now. In Australia, they like to shorten things, and so they're calling this ISO for the Rona, short for isolation for the coronavirus. So we're in week 4 of ISO for the Rona. For the next few weeks on the podcast, I'm going to be sharing excerpts from a series of interviews that I've been doing called Advice and Encouragement. These were originally video interviews done on Facebook Live, so you can access the full interviews and watch them if you're interested by visiting my website at sunshine-parenting.com or my Facebook page, which is Sunshine Parenting. Before we get to this week's interview excerpts, I want to share with you this week's one simple thing tip. This week's tip is to practice more kindness. Kindness is always a good idea, but especially now when people are suffering from mental health issues related to COVID and feeling especially anxious and unhappy, kindness is more important than ever. In a 2019 research study about the impact of kindness on happiness, they found, and I quote, "The results indicate that performing kindness activities for 7 days increases happiness. In addition, we report a positive correlation between the number of kind acts and increases in happiness. Neither effect differed across the experimental groups, suggesting that kindness to strong ties, to weak ties, and to self, as well as observing acts of kindness, have equally positive effects on happiness." In normal people language, this just means that kindness in any form, whether it's to people we love and know well or to strangers, makes us feel happier. So this is a great time to start thinking about ways that you can practice more kindness, whether as an individual or as a family. I have lots of resources available with ideas for practicing kindness, and you can access those in the show notes or by visiting my website. The one simple thing I invite you to try is doing just one act of kindness, even something very small like writing a note to a friend or baking cookies for your family. It will make them feel better, and it'll make you feel better as well. If you decide to join me in practicing more kindness this month, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch and let me know what you're doing to practice more kindness. And now let's get to our first interview, which was with high school English teacher and my oldest daughter, Gretchen Monkey. Since this was my first interview, the interview starts with my introduction to the series. Gretchen and I talk about what high school kids need from us during this time of isolation at home. And we also talk about tips for parents and teachers, including thinking about having a daily checklist instead of a rigid school-like schedule. We also discuss the importance of teachers offering some connection time rather than just having all of the online content being academic content. Here are the excerpts from my interview with Gretchen. This is the first of a series of interviews that I'm going to be doing over the coming weeks, just with some kind of advice and encouragement, because this is a really strange time and all of us have a lot of new things going on. And I'm not a doctor or a medical professional, but I do like to talk to people and connect and share ideas. So I figure I'll use that skill during this time as best I can. Plus, it gives me something to do while I'm home all this time. So anyway, I'm here this morning with my daughter, Gretchen. Welcome, Gretchen.
Thanks for having me.
Most of my interviews are going to be remote, obviously, but I'm fortunate that I have live here in my house a high school English teacher who is on, she's sheltering in place here at home, which is really nice to have her home. She just arrived over the weekend. So now she's here with us. So Gretchen, what I wanted you to share about today is just, you're closer to high school students because you work with them every day, and you're also closer in age to them than their parents, we are. So I would love for you to just start. First of all, tell everybody what you teach.
I teach ninth grade English, and I also teach 2 sections of AVID, and AVID is a college prep class. So that's been interesting to teach online because a lot of it has to do with team building, connecting with one another, doing in-class participatory activities. So that's been a little bit interesting to navigate.
Yeah, but she's been doing some really fun things. I've been seeing how what are those things called, the flip grid
thing?
Oh,
I've been doing a flip grid every day. So I'll post a video warm up, and then each of my students will respond with a video response, and you can comment and like everyone's videos. So I think it's been a way for them to stay connected. And I look at how many views each video has, and it seems like all of the students are going and viewing each other's. So I think that's a great way for kids to stay connected.
I wonder if this is also, some of them are getting to know kids they didn't know before.
Maybe. And I also have one page for all of my English classes and one for all of my AVID classes. So it's cross-period communication too.
So you're kind of connecting with all of your English students and all of your AVID students
at once
in larger groups. So they're now interacting with maybe kids in the other classes.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of nice. So, so Gretchen's school is not synchronous as of yet, or I'm not sure if they're going to be. And I know it's all over across the board, and some schools are still getting set up how they're doing this at home learning situation. So I know that, it's hard to know exactly what your kids are doing right now, but I do know that there's some things that all kids need from us as parents right now. So what, Gretchen, why don't you just start by sharing like what you think your kids, your high school kids are going through right now, how they're feeling, and what they might need from their parents.
So even on the day that we found out that school was shutting down, the kids who complained about school every day were also telling me that they would miss coming to school. And so even the kids who maybe don't love the academic aspect of school knew even before we went remote that they were going to suffer this loss from not being able to socialize with their friends. And as I see with my students, that a lot of them, that is what they value the most, is time with their friends and being able to socialize. So taking that away from them is a huge loss. And I'm sure a lot of them are going through a little bit of a grieving process with that right now.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, it's even those of us who go into a workplace feel the same way. I mean, it's a similar thing. I mean, a lot of what you do at school is not the academics. It's the saying hi to the friends, seeing your teachers. It's that connecting. It's the community that you're part of. So I think they're missing that. And so that's really hard. So I think I posted something earlier this weekend about, I saw a picture of my son's lacrosse game, the only lacrosse game he had of his season. And it's really sad because, for high school kids, being on their team and doing things together, that's what like makes life fun. So I think that is a big part, is just being understanding that this is not easy for them. And I think thinking back to, for me, like as an adult, I'm actually fine kind of being home. I do a lot of work from home anyway. So my life isn't all that much different, and I can connect with people online. But for kids, this is horrible during that time of life where you want to just be with your friends all the time. And now you're stuck at home with your parents.
And we don't have a system in place yet at school for having Zoom meetings yet. So I've been hosting them on my own, but not every teacher is hosting a meeting yet. And I've noticed that I'll go into the meeting with kind of a mini agenda to talk about, and maybe some book related questions. All of my students are reading The Hate You Give right now, but the meeting ends up just being a check-in. And I've heard from parents that all the kids are just looking forward to checking in with each other at these Zoom meetings. So they've become more about connection than any kind of formative work.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's actually good advice for other teachers, Gretchen. I mean, just honestly, if even if you don't have some kind of setup yet, if you can provide any way for your kids just to get together and, check in with each other, sharing what's going on. I know a lot of kids are sharing like their pets and whatever. And that Flipgrid thing is really cool because they have a chance to, I guess they can decide which video to upload. Is that how it works?
So they can redo the video if they want to redo it.
Right.
It's not a live stream. And it's been fun because I've been able to share a lot about my life with them. And I think as students, we're interacting with your students. You don't get to introduce them to your family or your pet or show them, your childhood photos. So I think it's been fun for them to see kind of different aspects of my life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you got to share me in my robe yesterday. Thanks for that. Yeah. I got to be introduced to our students in that way. So anyway, one of the things that actually really I thought was great that you did is right when this was all starting, you came up with this daily activities checklist, and something that I've been talking about. I've had a few different opportunities to share since this thing started and we're all home. And I'm a big proponent, as if possible, not really having a rigid schedule, but instead having daily checklists. And that's like activities that we want to make sure we do every day. And I think this is actually good. It's helping me as an adult stay kind of like in a little bit of a routine because I do think the tendency can be during this time, if you don't have anything that you need to get to or do, you really could do nothing. And doing nothing, as we know, does not promote us feeling good. And especially if we're dwelling on, oh my gosh, how long is this going to go on? How long are we stuck here? So talk about your daily activities checklist, and I'll also put a link in it in the notes here.
The first thing is when I posted this for my students, I did post a copy that they could modify because I think it's important that they have some autonomy in creating that checklist for themselves. So I said, you can take off categories that you don't feel are valuable, maybe add a category on there if there's something you think I missed, but make it your own because no one wants to follow a checklist that's created by someone else.
So the first one was academic responsibilities. And what I told Gretchen as soon as I saw this is I think this is equally valid for the adults and the parents to be able to follow a similar checklist. So actually you could put in here, work responsibilities or household responsibilities or whatever. And that, we all are doing that. And what I like about having these daily checklists and maybe have it be a family thing is that you are all doing it together. So maybe you have some different categories, but it's like you're doing the same thing as your kids. We all have autonomy over our own checklist and we're doing it. Okay, so talk about the categories.
All right, so the first one is academic responsibilities, which applies to everyone if you have work responsibilities or academic. And on here for the kids, I put finish your daily assignments, check Google Classroom, and attend any Zoom or Google Chat sessions that your teachers post.
Yeah, so basically fulfill your requirements.
Your school requirements. Yeah. And those kind of look different for a lot of kids right now.
Right. And I'm guessing that you feel the same way I do. This is not going to be like the most fruitful academic time for our high school kids.
Right. We were told that our goal is enrichment, informative work, and not necessarily to teach any new concepts. So I've just really been encouraging my kids to read a lot on their own. A lot of their prompts on my Google Classroom pages are prompts about their independent reading books and what they've been doing on their own.
I like that. Read a book of your choice for at least 30 minutes. And I like that. And I honestly, that's one of those categories, depending on the age of your kids. I think I love reading. You love reading. A lot of junior high and high school kids don't read that much these days. So that could be a thing that could be a family thing that everyone's just like, maybe you start at 15 minutes or something. But I do think getting kids reading more, if they're not already reading, could be a really positive way. Because like you said, at least it will enrich them in some way. Find a book that they're interested in, get it online or audio or whatever. Okay. What else do you have on here?
Mindfulness. So some kind of way to engage in breathing or any kind of mindfulness activity.
Was journaling under there too?
No, but we could add journaling to that one.
Yeah.
And I think that might make this category more applicable to other.
Right.
I think if you just limit it to Calm App and yoga, some kids might not prefer that.
So journaling, there was something else I was just thinking of that goes under that. Listening to music, would that be kind of?
listening to music. If you attend any kind of religious or spiritual service,
okay,
virtually.
Okay. So what else you got on here?
And then physical activity. So I told my students 30 minutes or more. And for them, they have PE teachers who are reaching out to them with virtual exercises. Good. And they're also, I know at Live Oak, every student who has a smartphone has the Nike app downloaded. So that's what they've been using to kind of monitor and track their fitness.
Oh, the teachers know?
The teachers have been assigning them to log time on the Nike app.
Oh, okay.
So then they can do any kind of activity they want as long as they're doing something active.
Yeah, so you said on here 30 minutes, and that's actually what I've given myself as a goal of just 30 minutes. And it can just be a walk or whatever, but I think it will help us all keep our sanity by getting some exercise, even if it's at home. And it seems like so many people are posting exercise things. Like there's a ton of free exercise content. I just saw
someone post elementary school indoor exercises. He's going to go live. I forget what his name is, but we can find him later. He's going live every day at 9 a.m.
Perfect.
For indoor exercise for kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so what else did you have under physical activity?
Physical activity, use any kind of app to engage in yoga or another at-home workout program, or take a walk or run outside. Anything to get your body moving. And I do think this is a good time to be physically active every day.
Yeah.
It is important that we're getting outside if you can.
Yes.
Or at least moving your body in some way.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't mean to be reading this, but I finished reading this Laura Vanderkam book. I'm a huge fan of Laura Vanderkam. If you listen to my podcast episodes, she was on before, but she's a time management and productivity expert, and she writes all about it. And she has a daily podcast called Before Breakfast with these tips and ideas. But her first book, which came out like quite 10 years ago or something, was available for $1.99 on Amazon or on Kindle last week. And it's called 168 Hours. And basically there are 168 hours in the week. And you read it and it really makes you realize how, if there's something that you want to do, you can make the time to do it. And when you think about 30 minutes, especially since we don't have our commutes anymore, if you think about what we're not able to do right now, I do think that if we all could do a little bit more activity, that'll make us all feel better. We already talked about reading.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do we have on here?
So next we have connection. And I think especially for high schoolers, this is really important. And I told them this doesn't mean texting. It means either FaceTiming or some kind of face-to-face contact with someone, whether that means having a conversation with a family member, calling a friend. I would say video games online aren't necessarily the same because you're looking at a different screen and you're not looking at a person. So I think that's fun for them too, but any kind of face-to-face virtual communication.
I think if they're playing, like talking to their friend while playing, at least that's a little better, right?
Like a game where they're chatting with each other.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because I know that my youngest son, who's 16, he's at home and he's been getting in these big groups of like 10 of his friends doing something online together. So I think especially for even just that kind of connection where you're just talking to people is better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
Better
any
than just
kind of connection.
Yeah, that's great. You also did you already cover these two?
Do an activity with a family member and then call a relative that's not living with you.
Yeah. So I like that. I think that's really vital. And I've been sharing if you're not used to doing some kind of family daily sharing, this is a good time to start something on a very small scale. So if you just have one time a day, for us, it's dinner because that's kind of what it's always been. So, people are doing their own thing a lot of the day. Sometimes we're in pairs doing things, but at least at dinner, we gather and we share our highs and lows. And then we've also been trying to just like do something together in the evening.
I've only been here for a few days, but I've really loved having family dinners again. And I think living at home or living where I live, I usually eat dinner with my roommate or just by myself. And it's fun being back. There are some things to be thankful for during this time because it is fun to get to be with my family again for a little bit.
I just appreciate that I have another female in the house. It's nice to have someone else here. Okay. So, and then finally, do not forget, probably most important is to get something fun on your daily activities checklist and literally make it something that you need to check off, because if not, we could all wallow in despair if we don't include some fun. So what are some of your fun activity suggestions, Gretchen?
Well, on here I said watch a movie or a TV show you've been wanting to start. And we watched a fun family movie last night. Is it Onward?
Yes.
Yes, Onward. It was really good. Bake something, play a video game with a friend online, start a blog or YouTube channel, and then just try to do something a little bit different every day.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. I've been encouraging people too, if there's like make a list, if there's things that you've been wanting to do, like random things like craft supplies that you have around the house that you could now actually utilize. Or I've been saying this for over a week and maybe I'll get to it, but like baking bread, like I've always wanted to bake bread, so I think maybe doing a brainstorm with your kids, what would be something that you would enjoy? I mean, ask them. And if they invite you to do it with them, great. And now that we're settling into it, I realize how critical it is to stick with my daily activities. And I think for our kids, this is important to help encourage them to make sure they're doing all those things too. Yeah. You mentioned something before we started recording, I think about sleep too. Let's talk briefly about that and then we'll close off.
So we had a staff meeting for my school this morning. And one of the things that was brought up is if this becomes a more permanent situation, when will we meet for classes? When will we have our Zoom sessions with kids? And immediately everyone was like, we can't start until 10 or 11 because no one's going to be awake. And I think this is a great opportunity for kids to catch up on sleep. A lot of the times students are asleep in class and tired in class. So maybe their bodies do need rest. And I think it's important to take advantage of that while we can and give them that extra time.
Yeah. And I'm sure some kids might have to be online starting at 8. I know I talked to one family this weekend and their kids have to be on their computer from 8 to 3, which I just think is not good. But I mean, I guess I can't change what the schools are doing, but I agree that giving our kids just a chance to rest and get extra sleep is really good. It'll make them more pleasant to be around and everything else. So, well, thank you so much for being on, and we'll see you back next time. I hope you found my conversation with Gretchen helpful. There are links in the show notes to the daily activities checklist that we talked about and other things that we referenced in that interview. This next interview is with camp director Allison Meshberger. She and her husband Andy have 2 young girls, Greta and Ellie. They are currently ages 4 and 7. And I've been saying throughout this whole isolation time that parents with younger kids who are also trying to work have a much harder job than those of us who have older kids who can be more self-sufficient with their schoolwork. Being a camp director, Allison is very creative and has come up with some really clever activities and ways to keep her girls engaged and doing some activities that they can do on their own, allowing her some time to get some work done. And you've done some really fun and cool activities with your girls, things that you've set up. Can you share like something that, or a few of them that have been especially fun and that the girls have enjoyed or have kept them busy for a while?
Sure. Yeah. So I think with all of this, I don't aim to be creating a Pinterest-worthy homeschool experience for my kids. If I'm completely honest, I'm trying to come up with activities that will keep them engaged and interested and wanting to do things and interacting with each other, teaching each other things, and then just kind of giving me some space so I can get my work done too. So I've been trying to get them to be able to do some activities independently. So I think the thing that I loved the most, and I think you did share it in your post, was the Post-it note activity. I created a Post-it note book for each daughter. So my 4-year-old just got, everything that is around the house: mom's chair, dad's chair, Greta's room. And so she had to go physically label all the things in the house. I don't know how many sheets are in a Post-it notepad, maybe 150. It took a long time, but she was eager to do it. She really, I think all kids, when they feel like they're doing something productive, I think they get engaged and interested. She did it all in one sitting, which was amazing. I liked that kind of focus from her. And then actually cleaning up was a separate part of that activity. So having to go around the house and pick up all the Post-it notes and put them back into the pad. That was, it just extended the life of the activity. And for my 7-year-old, she got some more abstract concepts. So I gave her mostly adjectives, things like funny, big, useless. And so it was kind of just really fun for us to go around the house and kind of tour what she views as funny or useless or big or small, expensive, valuable. So it's kind of a fun family activity to kind of learn that. And I had her put them all back together into a pad. We'll probably do it again, or maybe I'll pass it along to some friends. Who knows?
That's awesome. I mean, that's so fun. So how long do you think that, I like your whole idea. My mom always called it independent playtime. So I use that word with I know you have a different name for it because I've been at your house when the girls talk about it. What do you call it at your house?
We call it sister time. And that was, it's just, we tell the girls, go have fun, be sisters. We're not going to referee any arguments. We're not going to get involved in what you're doing, and don't try and get us involved unless someone's bleeding or really needs some intervention. So I think that's a good practice for them to have. I want them to work out their conflicts, and they do, they figure it out. But it's partly because it's good for them, and honestly, it's really good for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents, especially parents who work outside the home and are used to kind of like having this very like concentrated short time with their kids, have a little bit too high of expectations for like interaction with the kids when you're there all day long. Do you set aside some time that's like actual time together in addition to your like school little activities?
Yeah, so I think for us, for sure, family dinner is kind of a non-negotiable time. We want to get together and make sure that we're having that time together. And I think also in terms of planning what we're doing for school and kind of our plans for the day, my husband and I really want to spend some time with the kids. And so we kind of both map out some time to spend with each daughter independently. So that's not necessarily all together time, but we want to make sure we have intentional, I'm going to set everything aside and focus on you for this one activity. Today, my older daughter is going to help hang some curtains in our guest room, which I view as a life skill. And it's something that her dad enjoys doing and can really teach her how to do with her own tools. And it's exciting. So I think, yes, we do that together time at dinner. Outside of that, honestly, at this point, no. We didn't have any direction from our older daughter's school the first week. They were just kind of getting their plan together, which I'm fine with. I'm not critical of that at all. I think it takes some time to figure out a good plan. And so this week they have the work set aside for us and ready to print or pick up at school. And so last week I just thought, this is kind of a historic time that our kids are living through. And so I wanted to start a notebook where it's kind of a keepsake, and I'm asking very specific questions about the coronavirus. I'm asking things that I think would be fun to look back at in a lot of years, and really just kind of keeping my girls busy, and not to say it's busy work, but it's things that I think are good life skills to have. My older daughter has learned a lot about money and the value of coins. And so I give her a challenge every day to make a certain amount of money with a certain number of coins. So that's been a really fun kind of puzzle for her to solve. And I actually learned that from when I was in high school babysitting. The family I babysat for every week used to do this with their son. And I thought it was so cool at the time that, it stuck with me until now to remember to do it with my own kids. So that's kind of fun. It's just kind of things that I think are important for her to know and remember. She's really into Harry Potter right now. So our first one was a Dumbledore quote that just about finding happiness when you turn on the light. I think that kind of message is really important for her to remember. And I'm all about her practicing things like writing and handwriting in the context of other things. I'd rather not just, throw her in front of a worksheet. I want her to figure things out. So it's been just really fun to kind of do that. I glued in, I don't know if you can really see very well on the screen, but I glued in like a nature scavenger hunt for the girls to do. They both had that in their journals last week. Spoiler alert, they'll do it again this week. There's a journal entry every week or every day that it just kind of gives me an idea of what they're thinking. And Greta's too young, of course, to respond on her own, but I've done a little bit of just recording in that journal. I'll ask her a question and I'll record the answer, again, just for a keepsake and for something fun. But I have just checklists for them to complete every day. Last week, Ellie drew a map of our neighborhood and labeled all the houses or just our street really, and labeled all the houses where she knows the people who live there. I'm having her make lists of things like what are the top 10 things she wants to learn while she's doing school at home. So it kind of guides some of the other things that I want to do with her too. Well, I mean, again, I'm for sure not enthusiastic about worksheets either. And even my academic checklist loving kid is not super thrilled when I hand her notebook every morning. She pushes back, whether that's real or imagined, I don't know. But I think it's all in finding the context and finding the fun. You can do a little science experiment together that takes care of a lot of learning. You've got your measurement, and it's not standards based. Like I know how to write lessons that will accomplish the goals for first grade. I'm not even interested in that right now. I just want some brains on time. I want my kids to be thinking. I want them to be talking with me, interacting with me, following directions. So you can accomplish all of these things just differently. And when you're doing something like a science experiment, just having them kind of write out the steps ahead of time and plan it. There you go. There's some of the writing for the day. Rather than, unfortunately, some of the stuff that we got sent home from school is awful. It's just some boring, give me the 10 steps involved in something. Well, I'm going to put that in context and we're going to do one of these fun experiments together. I'll have you write out the steps as you plan. We'll follow the steps that you did, and then I'll have you draw a picture or write a little thing about what we just did or what we just learned from that experiment. So I think just kind of being able to do something fun and make it just point out all of those learning experiences along the way. And we also have a whiteboard upstairs, which I find anything my kids don't want to write on paper, they're super happy to write with chalk on the driveway, on the whiteboard upstairs. And so this morning, rather than having Ellie do her spelling words on paper as requested by her teacher, I just had her do it on the whiteboard upstairs and pretend that she was teaching Greta. So it was kind of fun for me, and both kids were occupied.
That's so good. That's awesome. Well, I just think I would for sure. The only thing that I would make sure I do for sure if my kids were little was the reading, because we always did that anyway. And whether it's reading aloud or using an audio book or whatever, I heard Audible is free, and I put a link to something for kids books. Have you tried that out at all?
Yes.
You have? Okay.
Yeah, and it is free. And there are also, I'm going to forget what it's called, but there's the website where all the celebrities read to kids. That's pretty fun too. I think it's called like Story Time. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, send me the link, because that's another thing. I mean, obviously it's really like a nice activity to read with your kid for 5 or 10 minutes, but how awesome is it if you can get your child engaged with a book, even if they're not really into reading themselves, if you find a great book that they'll like, that they can listen to, and that can be some of their own kind of schoolish time. I think that could keep people occupied.
Definitely. And I think using older kids to help with younger kids, I mean, not that that's a constant thing, but one of Ellie's assignments for school was to read a book today. And of course I added, you have to read it to your sister, because it just helps. And I think that it makes Ellie slow down while she's reading. It makes her read with more expression, which all these things are good for her. I just have to think ahead to kind of program the day.
Well, you do learn something better when you teach other people. So even if you had something that your child is supposed to learn for school or whatever, you could have them teach you how to, mix scrambled eggs or whatever their activity is that's assigned. Because it is more fun when you get to be on stage. A lot of kids like to do the demo, so maybe the parents can be the students sometime too.
Yeah. And I've really found, especially well, both my kids actually just love the attention that they get to show off the work that they've done. So we have these great, and you can make these at home, but we have these clothespins that have letters on them. So of course, Greta in preschool is learning all of her letter sounds. And so I gave her this clipboard and I just said, go around the house and clip something that starts with the letter J. And so she clipped the things around the house, and then she had to take us on a tour in order, A through Z. What did you find in the house? And so, I mean, that might have been 2.5 hours of fun, but it was, and I had her do it, and then we took a break, and then she shared it with us, but she was so excited. And it was fun because, of course, she didn't get them all correct. Like, there's some letters that are pretty hard to find in our house. And, you know, she's 4, so she's still learning. So it was good, though, because we were able, as a family, all 3 of us toured around the house with Greta, and she was able to kind of show us all the clothespins. And when she didn't quite have it right, one of us, Ellie included, would pipe up and say, well, actually, what you clipped starts with this letter. And so she would go and trade it, or she would say, oh, no. And then we would help her find something that would be the right letter.
That is so cute. And I'm going to go back on, I should have said this before the introduction. I think you are a little bit, I mean, in all areas of life, you're kind of an overachiever. So I think you are doing a whole bunch of Pinterest worthy things. I just looked at those things and I don't even know, how did you make those? How did you get the little letters, or are those drawn on, or are those little shapes?
These are little wooden shapes that are glued to clothespins. They're amazing. I got them at the Target dollar spot years ago. I mean, like when Ellie was in preschool. For this purpose. I saw them and thought, oh, how fun. This could do something cool.
You could get clothespins and just write the letters on though too, huh?
Absolutely. You do a Post-it note.
Or a sticker.
Absolutely. You do all kinds of things. But I think for me, rather than sitting down with Greta and talking to her about letter sounds, sending her off in the house to have an adventure, it's just so much more entertaining for all of us. And it accomplishes the same goal. So I'd rather not sit and try and homeschool a 4-year-old. Like it's a nightmare. But I think she's still learning. I think her brain is still engaged and she's having a great time with it. And that's what's important to me, is that she doesn't emerge from this viewing our relationship any differently. I mean, this is what we do with her on a weekend too. Maybe not such educational emphasis, but we still try and have fun. We still have adventures, and we still program part of every day, even on the weekends. And so now it's just the same thing. We're just trying to keep an eye on what she's missing by not being at school, and what we can kind of fill in the gaps with at home. But honestly, if my kids are playing in the dollhouse and pretending, I'm pretty good with that right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I feel for you and all the parents with young kids, because I think it's a lot easier with older kids, even if they maybe aren't enjoying being home. At least they're pretty self-sufficient, especially with their schoolwork, and we don't have to be worrying about curriculum. So, wow, awesome job keeping your kids busy. We'll have to keep checking back and seeing how long you sustain all these great what new ideas you come up with.
Well, you're getting both sides of it, though. So like you said, I'm sending you the high pictures and the low pictures. Both girls were in tears before breakfast this morning. So let me just be honest, it's not a win all the time.
Allison shared so many creative, fun ideas in our chat, and there are links and photos in the show notes for this episode if you want to check out any of those activities to try with your kids. My favorite for this week that I want to share with you is a graphic that I found at Tara Lee Cobble's Instagram last weekend, and it's called Who Do I Want to Be During COVID-19? I'll include the image in the show notes, but basically what the image shows us is the actions that we're taking in different zones to either stay in fear during this crisis, to be in the learning zone, or to be in the growth zone. I especially appreciated that the first action recommended in the growth zone is to think of others and see how to help them. which really goes back to the kindness tip that I shared at the beginning of this episode. This particular crisis of a pandemic is unprecedented for us, but we have experienced other hard things. And this time gives us an opportunity to practice resilience and to show our kids what resilience looks like. I encourage you to check out the graphic and think about ways that you can try to keep yourself more in the learning and growth zones during this time and out of the fear zone. My listener question for this week was, how are you staying positive during COVID-19? There are many basic things that I'm practicing, including getting enough sleep, getting some exercise, and being sure that I spend time connecting with people both inside my home and virtually. One of the things that's helping me is being really discerning about what content I'm consuming. So instead of spending a whole lot of time on news sources that just continue to share the same information that's all very negative, I'm choosing to consume some humorous content as well as good news content, in addition to the other news that is obviously right in front of us all the time. I've also been watching the most horrible TV show I've ever experienced, The Tiger King. And the great thing about that is when you look at these people's lives, you realize that no matter what a train wreck it is in your own house, it's way better than whatever they have going on over there. As always, you can find notes, links, and other resources related to today's conversation by visiting my website at sunshine-parenting.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my email list so that you don't miss out on any of the great resources I have available for raising thriving kids. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with a friend. Please take a moment to give Sunshine Parenting a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's end with a quote from my book, Happy Campers. This month on the podcast, on my website, and in the Happy Campers Book Club, we're focusing on the theme of kindness. The excerpt from Happy Campers that I want to share with you this month is from secret number 8, Make It Cool to Be Kind. Viewing both our own and our children's kindness through a growth mindset lens is extremely important. Rather than labeling ourselves or others as kind or unkind people, we can recognize kind behavior and promote the concept that each of us can get better at being kind through intentional practice. The surface level changes that occur when kindness is practiced regularly is a quieter, less volatile family environment. On a deeper level, everyone feels less stressed and happier when we are both the givers and receivers of more kindness. At home, parents can do both small and big things to encourage more kindness. Besides making your home life more pleasant, you'll be raising kind humans who likely will bring positive changes to the world. I'm Audrey Monkey. Thank you for joining me for the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Join me again next week for more conversations about raising kids who become thriving adults.